People often ask why we formed the Australian Jewish Association back in 2017. And the answer is that it was because the existing communal organisations were all drifting leftwards to the point where we felt that they no longer represented a significant proportion of Australian Jews. It was getting bad back then, but it's much worse now. Fresh from releasing statements on global warming and an Aboriginal voice, and right after their social media posts for the annual LGBTIQA+ Purple Day, Jewish roof bodies turned their attention to solving issues of gender at yet another full-day social justice summit, this time hosted by the far-left online magazine Plus 61J, a group aligned with the New Israel Fund and which is very comfortable attacking Israel and religious Judaism. Their next advertised event for October, by the way, is with a Palestinian Arab who, quote, spent 7 years in an Israeli jail for his role in the Palestinian struggle. I don't see Plus 61J getting all that hot and bothered by terror attacks on Jewish Israelis. Another example of our communal organisations going woke, Bren Carlil from the ZFA never has too many qualms about throwing mud at the AJA, but in a recent tweet he advocated giving land in East Jerusalem away to the Palestinian Arabs, a mind-boggling statement coming from the so-called Zionist Federation of Australia. It seems our pseudo-representative roof bodies have way too much time on their hands. But if they want to plan full-day seminars, here is a list of 5 topics that they might consider focusing on. Firstly, stopping the anti-Semitism and BDS march through Australian universities. We have watched with dismay how student councils of universities in this country have no problem with promoting blatantly anti-Semitic tropes. Apart from issuing statements of concern, what are our communal organisations actually doing? Oh yeah, they are working behind the scenes, as they always tell us. Perhaps advocating more strongly for the academic institutions to adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism would be a good place to start. How about a full-day seminar on preventing radical concepts making their way through the Labor Party, such as the impending recognition of a Palestinian state, as well as stopping the purge of pro-Israel members? Here is another important one: supporting Israel and its Jewish communities, including an unequivocal assertion that Jerusalem is the eternal and undivided capital of Israel, and that Judea and Samaria is an integral part of both biblical Israel and the modern state of Israel. Also useful would be a full-day seminar on combating the radical positions and influence amongst Jewish youth. That anti-Israel organisation that I mentioned, the New Israel Fund, has far too much influence over the younger generations, including here in Australia. Apart from a couple of youth groups, the AJA is the only organisation interested in supporting Jewish identity and culture in Australia and in accordance with Torah values. These types of issues are top of AJA's priority list and, we suggest, should be at the forefront for any Jewish communal organisation. But over the last few years, issues such as LGBTQ+ advocacy, global warming, gender activism and the Indigenous voice are the focus of attention for most of our communal organisations. You have to ask the question, why? These are not areas of major concern for Israel or the Jewish world, and people are quite capable of forming their own personal views without needing the help, or I would say the interference, of the Jewish communal organisations. Why are our roof bodies advocating these woke policies on behalf of the entire Jewish community? My advice to them would be, just stick to your knitting. The ZFA should talk about Israel and Zionism. The ECAJ can talk about Jewish issues of interest to the community, and AJAC will lobby the politicians on behalf of Israel. That's it. I can't understand why they are needed to have something to say on every woke issue and in your name. Were you ever consulted? Do you really approve of this? Here at the Australian Jewish Association, we certainly don't. This is Alan Freedman for the Australian Jewish Association.